The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
It's coming.
All these voices. All these voices.
They're not yours. You had no right to them when you were alive, and you have no right to them when you're dead. That's what it sounded like. Good, you know who I am. And you know I'm not playing. You're going to let those women go. In Jesus' name, you're going to let those women go.
Is there a demon here watching us right now? Watching us right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I'm your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me, as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
Good evening, misfits, sugar ladies, monster lovers, demon hunters, and motherfuckers. How's your night going?
Tonight's episode should be pretty interesting. It's actually a viewer request from the YouTube channel, and the subject of tonight's video is going to be the mysterious death of Gino Hernandez. Now, for those of you who are younger or who aren't wrestling fans, let me explain a little bit who Gino Hernandez was. Basically, he was wrestling in the 80s, late 70s, mid 80s is when he was in the ring. And he was essentially like a Ric Flair type of character, where he was like the pretty boy with the nice hair, and he always had the money and the nice suits and the sunglasses and riding around in limousines and getting all the girls, that kind of thing. It was that kind of character. And he was really, really good at it. He was a damn good wrestler. He was in the WCCW, which is World Class Championship Wrestling. That was a promotion out of Texas. This is back when all the promotions were kind of separate. Okay, you had the Texas promotion, you had one in Tennessee, you had the northern New England kind of area, and New York, that was WWF at the time. Which is now WWE. You had down in Georgia, you had some guys down there doing it. You even had some in Florida. And then you had Japan as well. So everybody had like their little territories. There's probably some I'm leaving out, but you get the idea. It was broken up into little territories. And in Texas, it was World Class Championship Wrestling. Now, we never called it World Class Championship Wrestling. We just said World Class Wrestling. But it was World Class Championship Wrestling, WCCW. Not to be confused with WCW, which is Ted Turner's thing later on. This was the time period when WWF was just starting to take over, where Hogan was champ, and he was going around to different smaller promotions and invading their area and putting on WWF shows. So it was kind of a tense moment anyway. I knew about this gentleman back when he was wrestling. I used to watch him wrestle, actually, because I lived right outside of San Antonio at Kelly Air Force Base at that time. And I was a big fan of wrestling then, as I am now. Have been pretty much my whole life. And I was a big fan of the Von Erichs. And World Class Wrestling was the Von Erichs' home. They were like the best there. I mean, they could do no wrong. Basically, you could go speeding down the road drunk as hell, doing donuts, and if they pulled you over and you were one of the Von Erichs, you were good. They just let you go. It was that kind of deal. So, basically, this guy lived his gimmick. Okay, he was an unbelievable heel. Now, for those who don't watch wrestling, a heel is a bad guy. And he was damn good at it. He could make people hate him easily. And he could make the women scream, and that would also piss off their men that were there with him. And he was a damn good heel, and he lived his gimmick. Now, what I mean by lived his gimmick is his gimmick was flashy, rich, spending money, getting drunk, getting high, doing that kind of stuff. The party guy, the rich party guy, and he lived that gimmick. He drank a lot, and he had many different drug problems. Among the list of drugs that he partook in on a regular basis was obviously alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, and like massive amounts. Wait till later when I tell you about this cocaine. It's insane. He dropped acid quite a bit. So as you can see, there's a plethora of drugs. And I'm sure there was drugs that I don't know about that he did. Because if you're doing all of those, chances are you're doing whatever is there. So, he lived his gimmick. He partied like crazy. To make ends meet and to make a little bit more money, because back in that time period, you didn't make a ton of cash wrestling unless you were one of the biggest names. And even then, you didn't make a ton. Not like today. So to make ends meet, he stumbled upon this opportunity because, as I said, he was a partaker of drugs. So he knew the players. He would buy a lot. And he came across an opportunity where he could go down to Florida and pick up a load of whatever, right? And bring it back to Texas and hand it off there to the dealers there in Texas. And he'd get paid for smuggling it, basically. He was just a mule. He would go get it and bring it back. He made pretty good money doing that. So with that money and his wrestling money, he was really able to live his gimmick and afford tons of drugs. In his apartment, he always had a cereal bowl packed full of cocaine, just almost overflowing with cocaine, pretty much at all times. That's what many different wrestlers, many different people that knew him personally said they witnessed on multiple occasions, was he always had this giant bowl of cocaine. So basically, he misses a bunch of dates in 1986, a couple dates in a row. That's a couple shows. And that wasn't like him to do. I mean, he didn't miss shows. He was all about wrestling. That was his life. And he was always there. So the fact that he missed a couple shows kind of set off some alarms. And people were like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on? Call this guy. Is he okay? So they didn't get no answer. So they sent one of the referees, who was a friend of his, over to his apartment to knock on his door and try to see what the hell was going on, why he wasn't at the show. So when the gentleman got there, he looked through the window and he could see through the window that Gino was laying on the floor, obviously dead, and he was already starting to bloat and swell, and he was already in the stages of decomposition. So he had been there for at least 2 or 3 days. So the guy lets himself in because he has a key. And he proceeds because he doesn't want, he can tell the dude's dead, but he doesn't want to embarrass him. He doesn't want to embarrass the company. So he goes in cleanup mode. And he dumps the giant bowl of cocaine. He gets rid of any drug paraphernalia that was in the apartment, all that stuff. Now we know that happened because the gentleman admitted to doing that. He gave an interview and said that he did that. Okay, I watched a lot of different interviews with the actual people involved in the case telling their story in preparation for this episode. So I can tell you he absolutely did go into that apartment. He was the first one in there after the dude was dead. And there was tons of cocaine. There was tons of drug paraphernalia everywhere. He gathered it all up and got rid of it. He flushed the cocaine. He threw away all the other stuff and took the trash out. He got rid of everything, okay? So the place had nothing in it. No drugs, no drug paraphernalia when the police arrived. But that's because he cleaned up the mess. So, on the table, the coffee table, was a pack of cigarettes. They were Marlboro Lights. And a lot of people have taken that photograph that was taken on the scene, showing the cigarettes on the table, as proof that he was murdered, that somebody killed him. The reasoning behind that is that he did not smoke, and he hated cigarettes with a passion, to the point where he wouldn't even allow somebody to smoke in his house. He wouldn't even allow you to bring cigarettes into his house. Okay? So that's the basis of this is a murder, not an overdose. Now, when the police first arrived on the scene, they originally suspected foul play and ruled it a probable homicide. But after they did their investigation and the tox screen came back and they saw that in his bloodstream there was 5 times the lethal amount of cocaine. So he had done 5 times more than it would take to kill a normal person. Now, because he did so much cocaine, his tolerance is going to be a lot higher. So I guarantee you, it wasn't like he took that much cocaine thinking, this is it, I'm going to end it. He probably thought he was fine because he probably thought, no worries, man, I can do this. This is not out of the ordinary for me. But because he was drinking heavily that night, that has an effect. That kind of mixes with the drugs. And we don't know what other kind of drugs he was on. We just know that he was very intoxicated when he left the bar. We know that because the gentleman that was with him that night gave an interview. And he told everybody what happened that night. He said that Gino was partying like crazy in the bar. And he was drinking very, very heavily and doing drugs in the bathroom. And that he left with 2 flight attendants. I think he called them stewardesses, but that's what they are, flight attendants. He left and headed back to the house with 2 chicks to have a little bit more fun when he got there. Okay, so let's role play this a little bit. Let's try to figure this out. It's a good-looking dude. He's pretty famous in the area. People know who the hell he is. He's got money to blow. He's partying. He takes 2 chicks home. He loved women. And you know what he's going there to do. They're going to have a good time together. So they get to the house. They party some more, right? They're still doing drugs. They're still drinking. And for whatever reason, maybe he's trying to show off about how much he can do. Maybe the girls were like, hey, we got to stop because we're getting way too messed up here. And maybe he's showing off and saying, oh, yeah, I can do way more than that. Look, watch this. And he does like a massive line after another or something. Who knows? Showing off and does way more than he should have done. Then he overdoses. And he collapses onto the floor. Now, the girls are probably pretty freaked out about that. They're probably trying to figure out what to do. Now, I'm sure they probably helped themselves to some of the drugs that were there. They probably helped themselves to whatever money was laying around, something like that, I would imagine. I'm not saying that flight attendants are like that, but it's human nature. Most people in that situation, nobody's there. The guy dies. Nobody knows you're there other than that one dude that was messed up at the bar. You don't know this guy in real life, like you just met him. So most people, if they see a bunch of cash laying around or drugs laying around and they do drugs, they're going to take them. So probably that's what happened. They helped themselves to some cocaine. They helped themselves to whatever money or jewelry or whatever they wanted. And I imagine one of them probably smoked a cigarette while they were trying to figure out what to do because it's a stressful situation. So they take their cigarettes out, they light one, they lay them down on the table. Now, he's not alive anymore to tell them not to. So maybe they smoke a cigarette while they're rifling through stuff, trying to figure out what they can take, or maybe they're just panicked and trying to figure out whether they should call the cops or not. And they decide that they don't want to because they've been doing drugs and they don't want to get in trouble and lose their job. That's possible. So they're stressed out, they're smoking. They decide they're just going to get the hell out of there and not call anybody, and they bail. Now, in the stress of the situation and the confusion, they don't remember to grab their cigarettes off the table. It's a perfectly logical explanation, especially considering their Marlboro Lights. Okay? You got to remember, this is like 1986. Okay, so 1986, if you were a man and you smoked Marlboro Reds or you smoked Camel unfiltered. You didn't smoke Marlboro Lights. That was considered a girly, womanly kind of cigarette. No tough guy, and he was a tough guy, no tough guy is going to be seen with Marlboro Lights back in 1986. That was a sign of weakness. You were a punk. They would call you a wimp, if you did that. So chances are that those cigarettes belong to a woman. That's just a logical conclusion to come to. Now, not 100%, they might not have been. But that's a good logical explanation for why they could have been there. Okay, they also found a bunch of cocaine in his stomach. And a lot of people that want to say this is homicide also will say, well, they found it in his stomach. He didn't eat it. So that proves that they fed it to him trying to kill him, that it was the cartel or something. Okay, well, if a cartel kills you, especially in the 80s, I don't know if you guys were alive then or if you remember the 80s, but when a cartel took you out in the 80s, it wasn't making it look like an accident. It was brutal, man. They blew your head apart. I mean, execution style, bop, bop, bop in your head, made a mess of you as a message, as a warning to everybody else not to do whatever the hell you did. So there's no way a cartel is going to kill him and make it look like an accident. They're going to make an example out of him if they want to do it, especially because of who he is. Okay, so it's not going to be an accidental death. It's not going to look like that. It is common in overdoses if the guy sits for a while, a couple days, for there to be stuff in the stomach. Okay, that's not out of the ordinary. That happens all the time. So I don't put any credence to that idea that because there was cocaine in his stomach, that meant that they tried to force feed him cocaine. Doesn't make any sense. When they could have easily killed him a bunch of different ways. You know, they could have just walked up behind him and shot him in the back of the head. Anywhere he was out in public. And just walked away. You know, why would they have to go to such lengths to do it? That doesn't make any sense to me at all. So, in all these interviews I'm watching, there was a guy that was one of his best friends, who was also one of the drug smugglers with him. They started doing it at the same time. They kind of started doing it together, and they were really good friends. He said, as well as a bunch of other friends of this guy, of Gino's, and other wrestlers said, that Gino's drug use had really gotten out of control. It had gotten to a point where he was doing way too much, and people were beginning to be afraid and worried for his safety. They also said that he was getting incredibly paranoid. And he was always telling everybody, almost every day, that somebody was out to get him, someone was trying to kill him, something bad was going to happen to him. And this had gone on for month after month after month, where he's just paranoid as hell and thinking somebody's after him. So there's also talk that on the day he died, or the day before he supposedly died, that he was telling people that somebody was going to do something to him and hurt him. But that had been a standard behavior of his for a while, and it was caused by the paranoia from the drugs. He thought he was going to get caught smuggling. He thought that if he got caught, that the cartel would come take him out because he got caught. He was paranoid. Okay, that was normal behavior for him. That wasn't some special thing that happened just on that night. Okay, now that is from all the interviews with the people that knew him and saw him every day. That's what they say. Now, the gentleman that was a drug smuggler with him, one of his good friends, actually got arrested for something and went to jail. And he did a fairly lengthy prison sentence. And he got out of prison, and these people that were making a documentary about this went up and asked him to do an interview. And the gentleman said, "No, man, that's ancient history. I don't want to talk about that. I'm putting all that stuff in my past. I want to make a fresh start with my life, and, you know, I don't want to be involved in anything like that anymore." And then they told him that Gino's mom was really upset and was scared to death and had been kind of watching her back and afraid to even go out in public ever since Gino died. And it was like years and years and years before. And when the guy heard that, he felt bad. And he's like, I got to do something about this, man. I got to do this interview because I can't have his mother scared to death that someone's going to kill her. You know? So he sat down and did a fairly lengthy interview where he explained exactly what was going on, exactly what happened. And he said that Gino's drug use had gotten way out of control, that he was constantly paranoid and thinking that somebody was going to kill him. And in the interview, he's speaking directly to Gino's mom because they're going to show the interview to her. So he's speaking to the camera like he's speaking to her. And he tells her flat out, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. Nobody's coming after you. Gino's death was an accident. He was a drug addict, and he was getting to the point where he was doing scary amounts of drugs. And everybody was worried that he was going to end up dead from an overdose. So that's probably what happened that night, is that he ended up dead from an overdose. He said, I can tell you that the cartel was shocked that he died. After his death, I kept on running the drugs, and they wanted to know what happened to him. They wanted to know how long his drug use had been like that, why nobody said anything. You know, so the cartel had no idea that he had died until someone told them. So obviously they weren't behind it. So he assured Gino's mom that there was nothing to worry about. Nobody was coming after her. Nobody was coming after her family. That she was free to live her life. That it was just an accident. So after all of the interviews that I've watched, after all of the investigating that I did, right, looking this stuff up, trying to figure out what happened, it is my view that that's exactly what happened to Gino Hernandez. That unfortunately he had a drug problem, and like a lot of addicts, their tolerance gets higher and higher and higher. They do more and more and more until finally it kills them. And I think that's what happened to Gino. I think that he was already doing way too much. And then I think probably he was trying to show off for the girls. And ended up doing a little bit too much. And it killed him. That's my view of what happened. That's my ruling on it. I'm going to say that it was an accidental overdose. And it's sad because he was a hell of a wrestler. And if he would have had a chance to have his career, he might have ended up in the Hall of Fame someday. You know, he was that good. He was a hell of an entertainer. I really enjoyed watching him. But that's the way it goes, man. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes with drugs. So what I would say is if you do drugs, or if you know somebody who's doing drugs and they're at the point where they're addicted to them and have to do them, try to convince them to get some help. You know, because I've been around a lot of addicts in my life. I don't do drugs myself. I have Tourette's syndrome. That's what all the facial twitches and stuff is. And basically that's an impulse control disorder. So I don't do anything that makes me lose any control over myself. Because if I get drunk or if I get high, it makes that a lot worse. As it is now, I can control myself. It takes a lot of will to not do something I want to do. I can control it for a short amount of time. But if I'm intoxicated, that goes out the window. And I'm a big, scary guy. I'm 6'5". I'm like almost 300 pounds. I'm a big dude. I've trained martial arts and fighting my whole life. I don't want to hurt anybody. And I don't want to be in a situation where I'm out of control. So I don't do any. But I've known a lot of people. I played music most of my life. I've been around that kind of scene. So I know a lot of people that do drugs. And I've seen a lot of my friends and people that I knew die. They either die or they end up in prison. That's what always happens to them if they don't get clean. So I would say try to convince them to get clean. If you're the one doing it, try to get clean, man. Just try to do it, because it always ends the same way. You know, it always ends the same way, and it's sad. And nobody wants that. Now, to the people that believe that Gino Hernandez was murdered, I would say, look at the evidence, man. You know, what you have is confirmation bias when you're looking at what happened here. And it happens a lot on these like conspiracy theory kind of things, where there's not really any actual evidence backing up. There's some stuff that makes you question, but there's no smoking gun that shows you this is what happened. So you go into it already thinking that it was a murder. And you look for evidence that proves that it was a murder, or at least suggests that you're right. And whatever you find that contradicts it or proves you wrong, you kind of excuse that away by saying, well, they covered it up, or this person covered it up, or something like that. It always happens. And I approach all of these things like a scientist. You know, I was a scientist at one point in my life. I did that kind of work. So that's how I approach everything here. You know, I look at the evidence and see where it takes me. I keep an open mind. I'm open to anything. But it has to have the evidence to support it. And every time something happens, I always look for a rational explanation. What is the path of least resistance? What is the easiest thing? What Occam's razor, man? What is the easiest way this could have happened? Is the easiest choice here that a known drug addict who was known to party and to show off, especially for other people, that he did drugs and overdosed. That's easy to believe. He's a drug addict who shows off. That's exactly what probably happened. That's simple. That's easy. Is that easier, or is it more likely that somehow he pissed off the drug cartel and they came, and instead of killing him gangland style the way they do everybody else to make an example out of him in gruesome, horrifying ways, instead of that, they decided they were just going to force him to overdose so that it looked like an accident and nobody knew what they did. Is that more likely or less likely than he was just showing off and overdosed? That's Occam's razor. That's what you got to do. You got to look for the most likely scenario. And if there's a scenario that explains it, that the evidence supports, that is a lot simpler than some grand conspiracy that you're thinking of, chances are the simpler answer is the right answer. That's almost always the case. Now, there are exceptions to that. I'm not saying every conspiracy is wrong, because there are some conspiracies that are right. There's some that have been proven right. A lot of them actually have been proven right. But I don't think this is one of them. I think all the evidence, everybody that knows him, everybody that's talked to him, everybody who gave interviews all say the same thing. So in order for it to be a conspiracy where he was murdered and it's being covered up, every single one of those people have to be in on it. Every single one of those people have to be telling the exact same story. Not very likely. Especially because some of these people have never met each other. The drug smuggler who was in prison for the entire time since his death and just got out, like right before he gave the interview, that guy had no idea what the other people were saying. He never met him. He wasn't around to hear about it. He was running drugs and then got arrested. So how did he have the exact same story as people that he never met? It doesn't make any sense. You know, as you ask these questions and as you go down the rabbit hole, the conspiracy gets to be less and less and less likely. Your hold on it becomes more and more tenuous. So you just gotta approach things that way and look at it like that. Okay? So my view on it is that accidental overdose. He died, unfortunately, from drugs. And that's sad and that sucks. But that's how it is. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I hope that answers the question for the subscriber that asked us to do a show on this. I hope that you enjoyed this. And I'm going to throw over to Old Boy. I might be back after him depending on how long he does. But I'm going to throw over to Old Boy and see what he thinks about this. See what his thoughts are. He's a huge wrestling fan. Probably even a bigger fan than I am. So he has a lot of knowledge on wrestling. I don't know if he knows who this guy was, because in order to kind of know who this guy was, you kind of had to be watching world-class championship wrestling. And in order to do that, you kind of had to be in Texas. And he is from Pennsylvania and then moved to California. So I don't think that he probably ever got to see this guy wrestle. He probably doesn't know too much about the case. But he knows a lot about wrestling. So it'll be entertaining either way. Let's see what he talks about. And then if there's time, I'll come back and say a few words. If not, then I'll come back to wrap up. So, Old Boy, go ahead, brother.
So, this is going to be a good one. Wrestling and tragedies and mysterious deaths and conspiracy theories. We'll get going in a minute. First, we were just going to do about Chino Martinez, a.k.a. Charles Eugene Matthews Jr. No, Charles Eugene Wolf Jr., sorry. A.k.a. the wrestling name Chino Martinez in WCCW. And he passed away in Texas, I think. He was working, and that's where he was, in the Texas organization at the time. Well, what supposedly happened is he was 28 years old. He had been married twice already. He had a alcohol and a drug habit, especially cocaine, and a gambling habit. Well, apparently one night he was found dead And originally they thought he was killed because he told people that there were certain people after him because he had gambling debts and drug debts and other things going on. But originally the police said that he was murdered because his door was unlocked, and I guess people who knew him, especially the Von Erichs, what another one I'm going to get into in a minute, or not in a minute, a couple minutes during the show, is they said that he had cocaine in his stomach when they found him dead, and he always locked his doors, and the door was unlocked. Another weird story was that there was a pack of cigarettes there, and he hated cigarette smokers. He didn't even let them in the house, even if they had a pack of cigarettes. And there was a pack of cigarettes. And they found him dead, and then they rolled it later on. It was an overdose. That he killed himself, or he accidentally overdosed. Accidentally overdose is what they're saying. They don't buy that. They think he was murdered. He had people after him for money and gambling, and you know how that goes, guys. That can happen. I didn't really know this guy. I heard stuff about him in the past. Because if you guys ever seen, if I'm a big wrestling fan, I watch WWE and AEW. Those are the big ones, and Impact sometimes. This is another one, and it's a dark past, and the cops ruled it as homicide and then changed it to an overdose later on because they couldn't find any proof, but there was plenty of proof. The guy wouldn't locked his doors, and it was unlocked. Just a weird way they found him, how he died. He was telling people there was people after him, and he had a bad gambling habit, and he was married twice. So that tells you everything right there. Guy didn't really know him too much because I know he was from in the 76 to 86 he wrestled, and then he died in 86. So he's one of these guys that died in the 80s. You know, another one is Bruiser Brody. He died at 44 years old in Japan. He was known for, he had a very hardcore style, like hardcore wrestling guys, like ECW kind of style. Very big man, 6'8". I remember The Undertaker was talking about, he was the first person he wrestled, and he pissed Bruiser Brody off, and Bruiser fucked him up during the match. Bruiser Brody was a crazy dude, and he had a bad temper and a lot of enemies, and I think Carlos Hernandez is the one that killed him. I guess they had issues in the past because I guess he always beat him in the ring and beat him up during the match. And he said they had arguments and they just didn't like him. And Bruiser Brody didn't like him and always called him a punk and stuff like that. So I guess they had a conversation one night in Japan, and he wanted to talk to him. So they went in the shower. I guess he asked him to come in the shower so they can talk about something. So they started arguing. They heard a lot of yelling. And one of the wrestlers at the time ran in there and saw Bruiser Brody bent over, and the other guy with a knife in his hand. And he stabbed him. And I guess he ended up dying from his injuries because they had issues together for a while. And I guess he said in the past he wanted to kill Bruiser Brody. It's another tragic story of wrestling because I'm going to get into another one soon. Originally, like I said, it was going to be about just Chino, and there wasn't too much about it. It's conspiracy theories. This one wasn't. Bruiser Brody was murdered. Just like Chris Benoit, you know, there's always going to be the Chris Benoit conspiracy theory of what he did and didn't do, and did he really kill her and kill his kids? Dude, just so you guys know, Chavo Guerrero already said he called him after that. He wasn't dead. It was the next day. You know, but like I said, people are going to have their opinions. Let's not get in. I've already did a show about Chris Benoit. I don't like wasting my time on that fucking idiot. And I know people are going to get mad. Well, oh well. Now, Chino, not Chino, I don't like him. It's Wolf. Charles Wolf is his real name, Jr. I believe, in my opinion, is he probably owed money from drugs or gambling, and Mafia killed him. Don't know which one, but he crossed the wrong people, and they unlifed him. We'll just put it that way. Back in the 80s and 70s, man, cocaine was rampant. You know, probably what happened. Got in with drug dealers or the cartel, or even because it's in Texas, or the Mafia, the Mexican Mafia. Even the Italian mafia, you never know, man. He could have been one of the mafias or one of these gangs or some drug dealer. And he owed him money and it didn't pay him, and he brought him over, and maybe they got in an altercation, or it doesn't look like that, but maybe they gave him some drugs and he died. You never know. Drugs are a motherfucker, guys. I've lost friends from drugs. One of my friends I've known for 30-something years passed away a couple years ago over a fentanyl overdose and heroin. I don't know if it was heroin, but fentanyl was involved. I think he choked to death. So they say. We don't know for fact, but we know he overdosed. I don't know how. I guess he choked to death. He had thrown up and he choked on it. And it's sad. I've had other friends kill themselves. They were on drugs and hang themselves. And I've had a lot of friends suicide altogether. And like I said, if you're thinking of suicide, please talk to somebody. I don't want you to take your own life. Anybody. Talk to somebody. Find help. I know it's hard. I've had thoughts in my head. Because suicide is a killer. People, men, women, children, teenagers. You know, you get down in life and you don't think there's any hope, and there is, man. Find somebody to talk to. Counselor, anybody, friend, even whatever you believe in, church, whoever. Find somebody to talk to. Hotline, just saying that. And there's people there that care about you guys. Remember that. The Bruiser Brody thing he was murdered. Cold blood. They had issues. I get that one. The other guy, like I said, I think drugs, probably owed the wrong person or said the wrong thing. And he was saying that people were after him, so that makes a lot of sense. I didn't really know, like I said, I didn't know much about that guy. And it's an interesting story because I was reading a little bit about it. And it seems like something was covered up. Or there's a reason. Some of these small towns, sometimes stuff are covered up because they don't want people to know the truth. It gets hidden. You know, Marilyn Monroe. That's another one. That's nothing to do with wrestling, but, you know, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about what happened to her. And she talked too much, what some people said. Plus, she was having an affair with the president at the time. That's what they say. There's no... You know, and the president's wife at the time, Kennedy had a lot of power. The Kennedys have a lot of power, and they have a lot of tragedy also. I'm not trying to get out because this has nothing to do with it, but it's another conspiracy theory going out there, so I'm just adding it to it. So, another one, the Von Erichs. They're doing a movie. I don't know if you guys know who MJF is. He's going to be in it. He's one of the Von Erichs. Another tragic family. Supposedly has a curse since the 70s and 80s. And it started with their son. He had 5 sons and only one's alive. Kevin. And it started before wrestling. I think the one son died at 7. The other one died at 23. He killed himself. The other one couldn't get over his brother's dying, and he killed himself at 21. The other one, I think, killed himself at 28. And then Kerry Von Erich, the Texas tornado, was going through a really bad divorce. And I think he got into drinking and drugs, too. And he overdosed and died. Either accidentally, but they can't prove it, that one. But he killed himself. They all died of overdose, except the one he shot himself. And come to find out, the one that survived, he has 2 sons, that he did in an interview that he actually thought about doing the same thing, but he didn't. Do I think they had a curse? Because I know the 7-year-old didn't kill himself. He just died, and I think that set it off. Like, the dad got really depressed. The one son killed himself, and they were all close, and one after another. And Texas tornado, I don't think had anything to do with that. Kerry Von Erich, I think he killed himself because, one, he was going through a bad marriage. He was 30. I think he was 33 or 36. 36, sorry. He was older, so, and his brothers. And, you know, when you're close like that, some of these guys, they grow up with their brothers like they're best friends. They're like best friends, they're brothers. But it is a very weird curse. They call it the Curse of the Van Erics. The movie's coming out called The Claw. I want to see it because that's always interests me, that family. They've always had bad things happening. I think there's a curse? There's a possibility. Maybe he did something. Maybe the dad did something, and because I forget what his name is. He had a different name. And maybe he cursed his family. I don't know. It's saying that he didn't. It didn't because it's, you know, his son passed away at 7. He had 4 sons die of suicide and overdoses. Yeah, I don't know, man. This weird things happen sometimes. Maybe they had curse of suicide. Maybe something cursed him. Maybe he did something. Maybe somebody in his family down the line before that did something. Hans was his name, the dad, and I don't know, man. That's a weird story, guys. I know we were talking. That's why I was throwing all these ones together because, like they said, conspiracy theories. This is a weird one. I don't think this is really a theory, but was there a curse? This is a different one. I have a different opinion, and I'll tell you guys in a minute what I think. I don't know. That's a weird one, guys. You can tell I can. I'm finally over my allergies attack I had. I'm got better. You can hear my voice. God, my voice was so horrible the last couple weeks. Even I had to take some time off. Coincidence or a curse? I don't know. On the Von Erichs, I don't know. Does wrestling have a curse altogether? What happened with Owen Hart? And then it broke his dad's heart. Then the British Bulldog died. Davey Boy and Dynamite Kid was his tag team partner, died before that. I think British Bulldog died he died over cancer, but he had steroids. Jim the Anvil Hart, I think, died of a heart attack. Brian Pillman was friends with the Hart family, killed himself. That's another one. Brian Pillman's son is going to be in AEW. He was in AEW. Now he's going under something King now. He doesn't want to go by Pillman in NXT. WWE owns NXT. That's another tragic story. He overdosed. There was a lot of overdose, a lot of tragic accidents that happened, especially with Owen Hart falling. You know, we know about that. You know, a lot of wrestlers died of either heart attacks from steroids or steroid use. There was a lot of steroids being done. You know, the Chris Benoit crap, and all this other stuff we've been talking about. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's happened. It's like the carnies, like Carnival. A lot of underhanded things go on. Back in the 80s and the 70s, there was a lot of companies like the WWE. They used to be like territory. You had NWA at the time. You had WCCW. You had AWA. You had Tennessee Wrestling. The WWE was something else, and then they changed their name in WWF at the time because it was even. Then they got sued because the WWF Wildlife Federation said they were copying the name, so they changed it to WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. I know a lot about wrestling, guys. I loved it. I've always have. I don't know why. Just like, you know, Bray Wyatt fucking dying. I'm still not over it. I love Bray Wyatt. It was one of my favorite characters of all time. I know a lot of people are still messed up. Another tragedy, like 36 years old, he ended up getting COVID and dying of a heart attack over it. And again, tragic stuff that happens with wrestling. Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, but he had problems. He died of being sick, cancer, and steroids and drug use. And Jake the Snake Roberts, I'm surprised isn't dead, but he changed his life, but he had a fucked up life. I mean, his dad raped his mother no, not his dad. His grandfather raped his mother, and that's how he was born. That's what he said. I watched it on Dark Side of the Wrestling, and he had a daughter, but he doesn't really talk to his daughter. And he said that he cheated on his wife. He did a lot of cocaine. Even in the shows, if you ever seen Behind the Mat, he was always asking for drugs, but he changed. He believes in God now and changed his life. And he's in AEW sometimes with the Murder Hawk, Lance Holt. But wrestling has you have to be a certain person. You're always out, I think he said 290 days of the year. You're gone. That's why a lot of them marry each other. Like The Undertaker married, Michelle McCool, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Before that, Triple H was with Chyna. Then Chyna married X-Pac, and then she passed away. They broke up. Edge and Beth Phoenix, they're married. Matt Hardy, and he met, I forget what her name is, but she was in TNA at the time. I forget her name. Rob Van Dam and his wife, and they're married, wrestling. Bray Wyatt was married to one of the wrestling, JoJo, the wrestling announcer. It's very, they stay in the family, I guess. and I guess inside the circle, you know what I mean? Like Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins are married and have a kid now together. It's just Chris Benoit before he was married to his wife. I don't even want to bring that up, but they were wrestling together, and she was married to Kevin Sullivan, so that's why people think Sullivan had him killed because they got divorced, whatever. It just they were all married at one time. Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth were at one time married. Another tragic thing happened. Well, Macho Man actually ran in a tree and died. Miss Elizabeth, I think she died of cancer. So there's a lot of tragedy to wrestling, and a lot of marriage. Like I said, getting to the marriage, there's a lot of people who've been married. A lot of tragedy happened with those too. It's true. A lot of people were married into the family wrestlers. AJ Lee and CM Punk, they got married wrestling. So it happens. Yeah. What's her name? Stu Hart. Not Brett. Jim the Anvil Neidhart's daughter, Natty Hart is married to Tyson Kidd. He used to be a wrestler. He doesn't wrestle, but she's wrestling. She's a part of the last part of the Hart family. They're married. It just happens. Guess that's something that happens in wrestling, I guess. But back to these, yes, I think there's some curses, some bad juju, maybe some bad things have happened, especially in AA wrestling, Mexican restaurant wrestling. There's a lot of stuff that's happened. Like the guy got killed after a move. He got his neck broke. There's stuff that happens there. A lot of theirs is more real. Not like 100%, but stuff they do is real. And there's a lot of mafia stuff going on there. Stuff like that goes involved. It runs some of these shows. And New Japan, they had a lot of crazy things happen over there. They did a lot of crazy different matches and hardcore matches. It's where Mick Foley got famous from. And other people like Terry Funk, rest in peace. And, other famous Japanese wrestlers. And they're just so hard to say their names. But there were so many, like the death matches, those were crazy, man. If you ever get to see those, check them out. Like this one was going to be different for me. Like I didn't know much about it. I read a little bit about it. So I was going to add all these other tragedies and stuff that's happened in wrestling and talk about that. And I think it was more of a thing that we can, is it wrestling a curse? Is there so many tragedies that's happened? Is it that there's something going on? Maybe. Remember Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler, and then Andy Kaufman ended up having cancer and dying a couple years after he was in those wrestling matches. So, again, more tragedy. And he was involved in it. He wasn't, he actually wrestled Jerry Lawler. He was going around wrestling women and beating women, and then he got his ass kicked by Jerry Lawler. In real life, Jerry slapped him, and then come to find out, he told Jerry to do it to make people hate him. He wanted people to hate him. Andy Kaufman was such a good actor, and him and Jerry Lawler was such a good actor that they played it and made people think they actually hated each other. And he really hit each other. And that's what he wanted to do. That's the kind of person Andy Kaufman was. That's a show I want to do about one day. We could talk about Andy Kaufman. He was a different cat. You ever seen The Man on the Moon? Jim Carrey really remind me, and I guess Jim Carrey's the kind of actor, he doesn't get out of character. It causes him a lot of trouble. He had a lot of trouble with Val Kilmer in the Batman and Robin movie. Or Batman Forever. I think it was. Yes. Batman Forever. They didn't like each other. So, that being said, I hope you guys like this show. I'm trying to make it different because I was adding to it. You know, and I want to hear what James's opinion on is, what he thinks is this is a curse. Is this just going along with like Hollywood, just like Hollywood has a bunch of stuff and mysteries and crazy shit that's happened, like overdoses and mystery deaths and people saying they really didn't die and they were killed, like Kurt Cobain, he didn't really kill himself, and suicides, kind of like that, like Hollywood and music. Conspiracies and wrestling. Tell us what you think always in the comments. Always check us out on Parax Radio every Sunday nights. Midnight, technically Monday morning, Eastern time, and Pacific 9, technically Sunday night. And the best of, I think it's Tuesday nights, 8 Eastern and 5 Pacific. You guys want any stuff at the store, he'll tell you where to go. Shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. Beanies, all kinds of cool stuff. Whatever. If you want something made, we'll make it for you. If you want something autographed, we'll autograph it for you. Check us out on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. TikTok, whatever you want to do. YouTube, we're almost everywhere. If you want to follow us on James Hershey's YouTube page. Follow us on everything platform. James Hershey or James Old Boy Ash. Look us up. I'm even on Google. Halloween's almost here, guys. The holidays are here, guys, almost. So, have a good night, misfits, ladies and monsters, and misfits. I love you, and blessed be, and have a good night.
Thank you, brother. Okay, so that's what Old Boy thinks about it. I want to address a question that he asked directed towards me this last little bit of time I got here. He was asking, do I think that wrestling is cursed? And that explains why all these tragedies have happened in wrestling. Once again, like I said earlier, it's a bit of confirmation bias going on here. You want there to be a curse because that's cool and it sounds neat. So you look at everything through that lens. You know, yes, there's been a lot of tragedies in wrestling. There's been a lot of people that have died and a lot of bad things have happened. But that's completely logical that that's going to be the case. These guys put their body through hell. They abuse the crap out of themselves. Okay? They have a lot of injuries and they have a lot of pain. So nowadays, it's opiates. They're always on pain medication, opiates. And they destroy themselves with it. Okay? Back in that time, before opiates were really a thing that everybody was doing, it was drinking, doing marijuana, doing cocaine, doing that kind of stuff to numb the pain and to keep you going. Because you got to remember, these guys are on the road almost 300 days a year. So it's constant travel, constant going. Sometimes they're doing like 2 shows on Saturday. I mean, it's nuts. So the cocaine keeps them going. The weed helps with the pain. The drinking helps with the pain. So they're drug addicts, a lot of them. And back in that time, it was all broken up into different territories. So it was a very rough and tumble kind of job anyway. You know, you were very likely to get the hell beat out of you if you went to the wrong place and did a show. You know, they handled things almost like the mafia did back in those days. They would mess you up, you know. So you take the drug abuse, you take the crazy schedule, you take the fact that these guys are just beating the hell out of themselves constantly. And then you take the fact that you're dealing with almost a criminal enterprise back then, to where they would really break your leg in the ring if you did something that made them mad. You take all of that into consideration, and of course there's going to be a lot of deaths. It's a very dangerous sport that they do. Okay. So then you say, well, would that account for the amount of deaths? There's been a lot of deaths. There's been a lot of tragedies. There's been a lot of bad things that happened. Okay. I get it. There has been. But what about all the ones that don't? Right? What about all the people that don't die tragically? What about all the people that don't have horrible things happen to them? That have a career and then they retire and they're fine? What about all those people? There's a lot. There's a lot more that get through it just fine than there are that don't. But you don't focus on those because the tragedy stands out. Okay? In every profession, there's people that die tragically. And you don't think about the thousands of people that don't. You just think about the one or two that do. Okay? Same thing in wrestling. Granted, there's a lot more than one or two, but the number of people who don't meet a tragic end is way higher than the ones that do. So if there was some kind of curse, you would think that those numbers would be reversed. There'd be more people meeting tragic ends and less people that didn't. But once again, you got to go where the evidence takes you. And the math just don't add up on it. It just don't add up. There's more people that get through it just fine than there are that meet tragic ends. We focus on the tragic ones because they're celebrities, basically. And we watch them every week and we care about them. So when they die, it sucks. And then you have a lot of them die and it feels like the end of the world. I mean, they're almost like your family. You invite them in your home every week and watch them and you cheer for them and you root for them. Imagine if that many members of your family died. You'd be freaking out. Oh my God, we're cursed. Same thing here. I don't think there's any curse in wrestling. I think it's just a very, very hard business. That's what I think. Let me know down in the comments section what you guys think. As always, it's up to you to make up your own mind. We appreciate you. We love you. And we'll catch you on the next one. Till we speak to you again. Love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you. And so do we. Bye-bye.